there, Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 192 of Ask Bossk Bounty. Regular viewers of my channel will know this already, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I answer your questions. And if you have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, then please leave that question in the comments section below. And as I said, hopefully you'll be featured and it keeps this series going. We have loads of great questions again this week, so thank you to everybody that did submit a question. And if you happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below and subscribe if you're new. Before we get on to the first question, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody that reached out to me about my Tungori video to tell me that my Rebel ground crew figure here has got the incorrect helmet. I think he has the Rebel Fleet Trooper helmet without the black on the painted on there. And this is what I was saying about Tungori in my video. I think they might be like factory rejects or whatever. And as I said in the video, I do not endorse Tungori whatsoever. You know, just because I do buy figures from them doesn't mean that I endorse them. You've got to sort of realise the pitfalls that come with ordering from Tungori, and occasionally you are going to get a figure with like 2 left feet, or, you know, the incorrect blaster or the incorrect helmet, lacking accessories on some occasions, things like that. But, you know, buy at your own risk. But as I say, I don't endorse them, but, you know, as you know, I do buy from them myself. But thank you to everybody for letting me know about the helmet issue. And with all that being said, let's get on to the first question, and it's from Norman Diaz-Bellot, and he says, "Hey Tim, about collecting TVC woes, I no longer worry about it since I began to limit my TVC collection to mainly OTC, army building, and getting just the figures I want and need. Question for next week, do you think Hasbro could use the Black Series Rancor mold to make a TVC Pulse exclusive with Jiran and Malakili as pack-in figures? P.S. When you have a Q&A with Hasbro, please ask them when Pulse will be available in Latin America. It has a very large fan base for Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, etc. Thanks and keep up the great work." Regarding the Black Series Rancor, I think that is an absolutely great idea. I don't see any reason why they couldn't do that, apart from the fact that it might annoy the Black Series community. At the end of the day, they've got the digital sculpt, they've got everything they need, and we do know that they reduce 6-inch digital sculpts down to 3.75-inch scale with a little bit of work here and there on articulation and things like that, but it's a pretty big beast, isn't it, at the end of the day? So I can't really see too many problems with that. And as you say, it'd be a great way to get Jiran and Malakili out from that legacy collection and help finish the 96. I'm all for that suggestion. Whether it'll happen, whether I think it'll happen, I really don't know, but we can keep our fingers crossed for something like that. Hill Matthews 4293 says, "Resubmitting my question from a few weeks ago. Great episode as always. Question for next week. I've heard several times from multiple places that for the HasLab Razor Crest product that Hasbro had made figures for all of the characters whom had ever interacted with the ship. This isn't exactly true, as we have never seen the characters from Season 1 Episode 6, The Prisoner. With the pause probably coming from the writer-actor strike to eventually making an impact on production, is it ever going to be possible we see Migs, Jan, Berg, Zero, Kin, and even Ranzar made into figures, maybe as another Amazon exclusive figure pack?" So at the end of the day, I think people get a little bit confused with this. This was all to do with like Patrick's promise at the time when they were trying to get the Razor Crest funded. I think he said something along the lines of, you know, if you back the Razor Crest, then you will get all of the figures that interacted with the Razor Crest. However, a couple of weeks later, he sort of, you know, retracted that slightly and said basically, you know, the main characters, you know, the ones that we've basically got at the end of the day. And there's only really a couple that I feel are actually missing from that, and that's Season 1 Grief Karga. You could mention all of those Prisoner gang, but at the end of the day, I really don't think we're ever going to see those figures. Migs Mayfeld, maybe. I'm not too sure if the others are big enough. Possibly the Droid Zero, because maybe they can use some parts for other figures once they've done that one. But I think those ones are too far gone in the past now to us get figures of those ones with all the other things that they've got to do. As you say, there is a pause, but I don't think they'll revisit those personally. Gary Moore says, "With episode 200 of Ask Bossk Bounty coming up, are you planning something special for the momentous milestone? Awesome as always, and fingers crossed for March Madness. Full on finish the 96 figures." In terms of the episode 200 of Ask Bossk Bounty, I'll probably end up doing a live stream for it like I did with episode 100. I remember at the time of doing episode 100 whether I sort of mix it up a little bit and ask people to send in videos of their questions. But to be honest, that just would have been a logistical nightmare for myself. And I think maybe a lot of people probably wouldn't have wanted to be on camera anyway. So I decided to do it live, and I think that worked out well. And I will probably repeat that for episode 200. Man, episode 200, that is crazy that I've been doing it for 200 weeks with the odd gap here and there. But 200 episodes, that's That's amazing, really. And in terms of you wanting them to finish the 96, Gary, I'm sure you are not alone in that opinion. And remember, every opinion counts in this community. Everybody wants different things, but everyone's opinion counts. And in my opinion, everybody's opinion should be heard. Kurt K6592 says, always appreciate this series, Tim. Thank you. Since the Jabba's throne room was such a success, how do you think we might get a cantina? 2 parts, 3 parts, or a HasLab? Yeah, I don't really know. I think if they do it in a HasLab, then it'll be the whole thing. I think if they do it outside it, very much like they've done the Boba's throne room, then potentially you could see maybe 2 or 3 parts. I'm just for the quickest way of doing it, basically. I don't really care how they do it as long as they do it. And when they do it, they give us all of the characters that go in it, basically. So that's my thoughts on it. Kevin T1911 says, hi Tim, question for next week. What do you think the chances are that when we do get a figure for Cobb Vanth, that it is a deluxe figure and he could come with removable armour like the one of the versions of Jango Fett and a swappable head helmet? That way we could get both a Mandalorian Season 2 and a Book of Boba Fett version at the same time. What do you think? Yeah, this has been a topic of conversation before, you know, regarding the, you know, the swappable armour and everything. It depends whether they can actually make that good these days. You know, I wouldn't really want something where the armour keeps falling off or the figure's got like a big hole in his chest where you have to put the armour in and things like that. They've got to do it properly, and we'll have to wait and see what they do. I personally feel that when we do get Cobb Vanth, that it will be more than likely the Book of Boba Fett version. And if they do make him deluxe for whatever reason, he'll probably just come with like a chest of spice or something, and maybe a womp rat or something like that. I don't know, but I'm not too sure if they'll do the removable armour. Personally, I think what they'll do is very much like they've done with the Black Series, is you'll get one figure, and then once they've done that one, then they can obviously make the other one, and, you know, just kit bash it basically. David Gherkin says, question for next week. How long do you think we'll have to wait for an Ahsoka in her white outfit from the series? Ahsoka the White. Well, I've got to say, I've had a quick look at a picture of her in her white outfit, and I've got to say, maybe they could just repaint the Ahsoka that we've already got. I did find it strange that they gave us the Ahsoka that we already have just repacked onto an Ahsoka card. I say surprised, but at the end of the day, it's very, very easy for them to do, and I guess she's wearing the same thing, isn't it? But, you know, the one that we all want really in the community is the white version. 1, because it's different to the one that we've already got, and 2, because she looks pretty cool, and 3, because she wore that outfit in Rebels as well. Would you, in the community, you know, question for you guys, would you be happy if they just repainted it or slightly retooled that figure, or would you want it to be all new with a white poncho and all that kind of thing? Let me know in the comments. But I'm looking at that and I'm thinking maybe they could potentially repaint most of it, and I'd probably be happy with it. CBZ Skeleton says, hello Bossk, question for next week. Do you think we'll get a Jedi Legend Obi-Wan like the Black Series did? And do you think that if Hasbro make a new Episode 3 Anakin Skywalker soon, they'll go the lazy route and just reissue the Episode 2 mold and give it a new head and right hand? That figure is good for the time, but the legs are difficult to work with and the mold is a bit skinny for a Revenge of the Sith Anakin. I personally think if they do a Revenge of the Sith Anakin, they've got to do an all new one personally, or adapt one of the sort of new Jedi molds that we have. I'm with you, they can't go back to that figure in my opinion. I think it's too different anyway. In terms of the Jedi Legend Obi-Wan, that is definitely something I would want in the line, but this is my problem with Hasbro and the new media in the vintage collection, because if they did do that figure, that would be the 4th Obi-Wan that we've got from the Obi-Wan series, and not a lot else from that series. That is the problem, isn't it? And this is the issue that I have with wanting things from the new media. I repeat, I want stuff from the new media, but not when it's just dribs and drabs. Give us a meaningful amount of characters, not just a couple of other characters and a kit-bashed Jawa and a kit-bashed Phase 2 Purge Trooper or whatever he was, you know? They've got to give us something else. They've got to do better. Morgan Pogue says, hey Bossk, love the content, keep it up. Question for next week. Do you think we'll ever get a Vintage Collection scale Republic gunship or ATTE? So I'm not 100% sure what you mean there by scale, because I actually think the ATTE that we've had previously is a big enough scale. I think that's absolutely fine, and I would like to see them reissue that in a Vintage Collection box because of its re-emergence in the Ahsoka series, for one. In terms of the Republic gunship, yes, I would like them to make that a slightly larger scale, but I kind of think that's not going to happen. So once again, if they were to reissue the Vintage Collection version 1 that we got back in TVC 1.0, I wouldn't be too bothered if they did that either, because, you know, I definitely want 1 or 2 of those. A couple of questions about HasLabs and reissuing HasLabs here. So we have Chris Kolb2605 says, hey Tim, question for next week. A previous Hasbro HasLab Hero Quest just released some of the exclusive sculpts and characters from the unlock tiers as normal retail releases. Do you think this means anything for possibly getting a past TVC HasLab again through retail Hasbro Pulse, i.e. the Katana? Always appreciate what you do for the TVC community and always putting out great content, reveals, reviews, Our Spots Bounty, live streams, Ewok Raves. Cheers from Alaska. Thanks, buddy. And Seb Winterfell says, hello BB, video was great as always, and so was the sound despite your device's problem. Question for next week regarding some of the HasLab project, meaning all of those that are crowdfunded from now on. What becomes of the mould after every unit are sold? Because I can hardly imagine that they just destroy them. So would there be a chance that some of these products could be re-released in the future? Thanks a lot and keep up the great work. You are the best, Tim. Thank you so much. So 2 questions that are pretty similar there, and I always go back to this. At the end of the day, I haven't got a problem with them reissuing HasLabs, the Katana. I think loads of people around the world deserve to have that vehicle and didn't get the chance to get one. However, I always come back to the fact that these HasLab things at the time are sold on the basis that they are exclusive and they're never going to sort of, you know, this is the only way that you can get this item right here and now. You have to buy it now. And the problem with re-releasing something or reissuing something, even maybe 10 years later, if they're still doing HasLabs, then they will get less backers for those HasLabs. Because people will think, well, it's just going to come out anyway, or it's not going to be exclusive, or it's not going to be, you know, increase in value, it's not going to be an investment. Whatever the reasons for people that buy these HasLabs, all of that would go out of the window because that model would be broken. And that's what I think about it. And of course, yes, they probably still do have the tooling and the molds for them and what have you. And maybe they'll be able to reuse them on a rainy day in 10 years time when everyone's forgotten about the HasLab model. But I think while they're continuing to do HasLabs, it probably wouldn't be a good idea to re-release them because, as I say, that whole business model would go out the window. Gekland says, if Hasbro decided to concentrate on one Disney Plus live action Star Wars show only, but would make every figure and beast for it, what show would you pick? Man, that is a great question. It really is. And it did make me think for a second because obviously there's some shows that I really, really love and just want more things from. For example, Andor. However, I do realise that with Andor, there probably isn't a massive amount that you could get out of that. So I'm going to be a bit boring here. I'm going to go with The Mandalorian for 2 reasons. The first reason is that we already have lots of stuff to go with it. And this is my thing about new media. I want them to be able to world build it. I want lots from the new media. And at the end of the day, we've already got that with The Mandalorian, but there is so much more they can do, particularly with vehicles and beasts. So if you're talking about that, you mentioned beasts in your question. You know, we need a Blurg. We need a Mudhorn. We've already got really cool vehicles in this and the N1 Starfighter, but there's so much more they could do. And we've got the Razor Crest, of course. So I would like to build around that even more. And of course, that does also bring in Ahsoka and the Book of Boba Fett as sort of side projects as well. Things can cross over. So I'm going to go with The Mandalorian. That guy from Naboo says, question for next week. Hey Tim, boss, do you think the new Clone Trooper 4-pack that was pipelined will have the swappable helmets or not? I'm honestly fine with whatever. What's your thoughts? I personally think it will be like the 212 pack in that they have removable helmets. I think they only mentioned about swappable heads for female characters because of the whole debacle with Sabine. I think with clones, they're just going to continue with the removable helmets. That's my opinion anyway. I don't know for a fact. But what I do hope is that they sort out the paintwork on the helmets, that they give them the proper visors and things like that. Or even maybe go back and resculpt the helmet. So at least you can put that better visor on. Ruler of Randomness says, hey Bossk, hope you and the family are well. I can't remember whose interview Hasbro said this in, but they claimed both Black Series and TVC would get figures from the Phantom Menace's 25th anniversary. Are there any releases you expect or hope for? I'm hoping we see a new battle droid since none of ours can properly hold their blasters. I wouldn't complain if we got an army builder style set of the droids on the Naboo starship. May the force be with you always. I've got to admit, I don't remember them saying that at all in anything that I've seen. I may have missed it, I may have forgotten about it, and if they did say it, then brilliant. In terms of next year for the Phantom Menace, at one point I did think that maybe we would be getting a few things from the Phantom Menace, but I really don't know if we are going to be now. You know, looking at the pipelines and other things that we know potentially going to be coming with new media next year. Obviously, we know the Black Series are going to be getting a few things, but you know, there's loads from the Phantom Menace that I would like. I would love a new Destroyer droid for a start. I think the Black Series are getting one of those, a really good one that was pipelined, I seem to remember. So yeah, let's see what they do with the Phantom Menace 25th anniversary, if anything at all in TVC. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Phantom8222 says, question for next week. What HasLab vehicle would you want Hasbro to make that was only ever present in a novel or comic, not including any vehicle that came out in the movie or Disney Plus shows? Man, I'm not a huge EU book reader or comic reader. I've read a lot of the comics from 2015 onwards, so it's quite difficult to pick something for HasLab that would be quite large. But two vehicles that I would say I feel would be quite good for the vintage collection. One of them I don't think would ever be able to be made just because of the shape of it, and that one is the Archangel that is owned by Dr. Aphra. I do like Dr. Aphra as a character, and I enjoyed the comics that she was in. And the other one is the Outrider, of course. I think a lot of people would like that. Very sort of Millennium Falcon looking, isn't it? And, you know, I think they could accomplish that one quite easily. But I don't think either of those really sort of qualify as a HasLab. Lamar Avery says, question for next week. Do you think we'll get the 3 witches, Stormtrooper gunships, Teenage Mutant Turtle dudes with their Winnebagos that Ezra was hanging with? Hasbro needs to get these figures made ASAP. I've got to say, mate, no chance on any of those, personally. That's just my personal opinion. I just don't think we'll get any of those. The one that you mentioned there, the Stormtrooper gunship, would be pretty cool because, as I say, we're all crying out for vehicles. And I think Chris from Bantha Skull mentioned that one in a recent article on his website, and I totally agree that it would be cool. I think it's been in multiple medias now. So, yeah, that would be a good one. But I've got to say, your list there, mate, I just can't see them doing them. Might I just add as well that that doesn't mean that I don't want them to do them. It just means that I just don't think they will. Poogie4812 says, I know you are totally TVC, but this Star Wars Black Series Holocom collection is a total insult. What do you think about it? I agree with Usual Mike. Lame Hasbro. I watched Usual Mike's video on that, and I'm not too sure if he said that they were lame. I think he was on the fence about them. I'm not too sure if he had sort of had like a definitive opinion on them. I do have a definitive opinion on them. I don't like them at all. I mean, if they did something similar in Vintage Collection, I wouldn't really like it. And that's because I'm not really a massive fan of like gimmicky things. I would rather just have the figures from the TV shows and from the films rather than these gimmicky things. Yes, I realise holograms are in the shows and what have you, but it doesn't mean I need a figure of them. I'd prefer like they did with Cody, where you get like a little thing for them to hold in their hand, or on like a little puck or something. Very much like we got with the Mythrol. That was a pretty cool accessory. That's how I would like them to do in the Vintage Collection. Now, I don't need actual sort of clear figures in the Vintage Collection, which will no doubt be charged the same or more amount of money for. Andy McGlashan says, are you worried about the future of the Vintage Collection? I can't help feel that a lot of the pipelines are going to be peg warmers, and Hasbro will take the wrong message from this and reduce the budget of the line in the long term. Enjoy the content, mate. I've got to say, I'm not too worried about the Vintage Collection on a whole. I am a little bit worried about 2024. What worries me a little bit more is the decisions that Hasbro make in terms of the figures that are being made. If you look at the Ahsoka series, for example, you know, Morgan Elsbeth, of course she's one of the main villains and we do need her in the line, but do we need her over Baylan Skoll and Shin? No, we do not. Those are the two characters that would have sold like hotcakes, lightsaber wielding characters. So that is what worries me a little bit, just the decision making about the characters that we're getting. The repacks that you mentioned there in the pipeline with the Andor figure, that is hugely worrying. Finn, okay, yes, we do need Finn in the line, but not the one from the Black Series 3.75 repacked. You know, give us the Rise of Skywalker one or something different. At the end of the day, these little decisions, you know, are worrying to me in 2024. And in terms of Hasbro taking the wrong message, if they take messages from, you know, a repack of Andor not selling, then, you know, I really don't know what to say. Alright then guys, thank you so much for watching this episode, and also thank you very much for your questions that you submitted this week. Don't forget to submit your questions for next week's episode, and I also want to apologise for not having too much on show that is to do with the questions that are asked. Some of the questions are about things that we just don't have, and also I'm in the middle of moving my collection room, so I don't have a lot of my stuff to hand. But, you know, I've got a bit of Mandalorian there. And, yeah, if you haven't checked out my retro collection video to check out the recent wave of Return of the Jedi figures and my Tungori video, those are on the channel right now for you to check out. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members. And thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members. As always, your support means a great deal to me, so thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next one.